What's up, warriors? Leslie Liu here. I'm going to get right into it today. A lot of people ask me, why is it important for me to approach self defense in a different way? So, my company, Reclaiming Your Courage, really focuses on a way of empowering women through a holistic approach to self defense. And really, what that means is helping you create a foundation and a mindset around that you're worth fighting for, amplifying your voice and creating body awareness. So it goes far beyond the physical, right? And the reason why this is near and dear to my heart is look, I've been a martial artist for over 20 years, but I haven't always been someone that has been strong in my presence, in my voice, in my body, in anything. If anything, I'm the underdog and I'm used to people just counting me out and dismissing me face to face, right? Like she's nothing. Like I can take her, I can manipulate her, I can do this and that. So that's part of my journey. And there's been so many times in my life that I have been victimized and abused in a lot of different ways. And as someone who's been a survivor of sexual assault at a young age, I know what that does in terms of trauma and that living in my body for over 30 years. So it seems ironic that being someone who has two black belts, it's like, well, you should be unstoppable and like fearless. No, I'm here to tell you if a martial arts instructor or somebody tells you to be fearless, then run the other way because it's being so scared that and to remind yourself that you're alive where those instincts kick in. It's being so afraid to lose the things that you love and to see the people that you love possibly getting hurt that shifts the mindset for you. So that's a big part of it. And so years ago, when I was in a traditional gym environment, I mean, I loved my gym and it was very family oriented. It was just like the right place for my husband and I. And so over the years, we had done women's workshops specifically in the traditional way, right? Like, you ladies, like, how many times have you taken a class that's like, hey, this workshop for self defense, right? Here's what I know to be true. When I was confronting the things that have happened to me, right, and really starting on a healing journey, I learned that it wasn't linear. Like you cannot just go from point A to point B. Like, hey, I want to be better, and that. Because when I was struggling through some deep bouts of depression and anxiety and suffering panic attacks and all of these things, I had to really dig deep. And so one of the things that was comfortable for me to always know is that I could revert back to being in an environment that I know. And martial arts has always been that for me. Here's the thing about that, though, is when you are someone who has been a survivor, whether through domestic violence, sexually assaulted, raped, all of these things, those environments don't aren't built in a way that really creates space for you to process any of that, right? And so you go into a traditional environment and it's like, just do the move, just do the technique, just do the thing, just poke the eyes, just kick the nuts, right? And so I know for me, there were so many blockages along the way and and so much inner critic dialogue of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, that really held me back from reaching my potential and doing the moves. And I always say I don't like being in gym environments and being yelled at, or it kind of has this authoritative tone to it in a traditional environment. I'd say to do this and then you should do it and without any question. And most of my life, is how I have always been programmed to be, is like respect the men, respect the elders, respect the culture, all of this stuff. But I started to really question as I was learning certain things of like, hey, my brain doesn't really work like that, or this technique specifically isn't really working for me. So how can we find a different way to get to the same end goal? I didn't like certain male instructors. Like there's great male instructors out there, and then there's creeper male instructors, right? That don't ask you for consent before making adjustment or anything. And so I was very aware of that. And so I didn't really have anyone to for me and to process. And so I had to go away from gym environments and really, really focus on deep healing, right? I hired a great somatic memoir coach, went through therapy, did some deep modalities and spiritual work. To really, really concentrate on some intergenerational wounds to come back better in the gym environment and to start leading women in self defense. So, fast forward a few years, I started realizing things really quickly is that in a traditional environment, you have women in these classes and they're really empowered and they're like, I can kick so much ass now. And then what happens a week later or a month later, they forget what they learned and there's nothing empowering about that. And why is that? Is because at the root of it, there's still fear because we haven't created a space where we could talk about what was on our mind, on our heart. And so when I was teaching in this traditional environment, it was like, yeah, it's great. I love teaching women how to show themselves that they're stronger than they know and the actual physical techniques. There's no doubt about that. I love that. But what I started noticing was there was always a handful of women in the class that were stuck just living in here and frozen. And, in some environments, right, in all communities, we have different ways of showing love. And for some people, that is like, yeah, let me just yell at that person or just like be like, come on, you can do it. Come on. And for some people's personalities, that works. And for others, it shuts us down. And for me, that was always something that shut me down. And so I started going to these women and really, really asking them, whose voice are you hearing right now? What's going on? Tell me the story of what happened leading up to this moment. Right? I want to hear those stories. Like, you have to create safe spaces for communities. You have to ask the question around, well, how do you identify? And how does that intersect with the way that a potential attacker perceives you? And people are like, no one's ever asked me that. But it's an important component, right? So whether you're neurodivergent, disabled, right? Like you are part of the queer community, right? It's important to be able to create spaces and saying like, hey, yeah, like I was wildly uncomfortable in that class because I just had top surgery. And so the fact that I wasn't even asked around touch, right? Consent around touch was really bothersome to me. And it made me want to give up and not learn it. So I started hearing things like that. I started hearing things like, well, I'm an Asian chick. I'm 4'10". Like, there is no way I'm going to be able to protect myself. Right. So I started hearing all these and holding space for all these things. And so instead of just drilling and having women repeat technique over and over again, I feel like that's the easy part. You can teach anyone how to punch or kick. But if you don't teach them the oomph behind the kick or understand what drives them, you can't teach them to kick through the pad. So, really starting in the mindset work was really important. And then I had the honor of working with ladies that were really great coaches and saying, like, hey, you really have the strength of helping women find their voice, right? So, it's one thing for women to physically protect themselves, but I started to create activities around, like, okay, so what is too close for comfort for you? in terms of a physical boundary? And what would you even say to someone who crossed that boundary? And so there was a lot of hesitation for women in the room, right? Their throat chakras were just clogged because they've always grown up playing it small and not cultivating their voice. And so for me, it was a big proponent of my work. And so I spent years creating my MBV method, mind, body, voice, because I realized really quick that you cannot just have one or the other. You can't just have a strong voice and neglect your body awareness and knowing the basics and the foundational things. You cannot neglect your mindset and think like, I'm physically strong. I go to the gym. I'm so athletic. No, because the value you place on yourself is the thing that's going to help get you through when you physically cannot struggle with a guy twice your size for over 12 minutes. That's just a reality, right? Like self defense is not about going toe to toe with men. It's about doing enough to escape the situation and come back home to your loved ones. And so, in really, really nurturing women on the mat with this mindset piece, and was the exact same framework I had to take myself through, and it's the exact same thing that I use today when I'm struggling through so much. Is when we tapped into this mindset piece, when we tapped into helping women really speak up, right? When it came to physically protecting themselves, it's like we could translate that over to the workplace or in business. Because I had women come up to me and be like, I live in a great neighborhood. I don't feel physically threatened. Okay, if that's your experience, I appreciate that. But tell me, why is it that you can't advocate for yourself when those microaggressions occur in the workplace? Or what is holding you back from telling that toxic family member what your boundary is? Okay. So there's physical and there's non physical, right? There's no way around it, right? And so when I was supporting these ladies in this mind body voice type of way, and we spent maybe 2, 3 months on it, you guys, these women went from being frozen and scared to bats out of hell, like, roar, like more powerful than you could ever imagine. And that's why it's important for me to do this work, because I have seen women go from being frail and so like not vocal in any way to badasses, to women that are like, you know what? No, I don't like that. Or you know what? I deserve higher pay, right? I'm a valuable member of this company and this is what I deserve. Or maybe it's time for me to disconnect from that friendship because this person doesn't have the ability to be happy for me. It's important to me because these very skills that we teach at Reclaiming Your Courage can literally save your life. You will never see me advocate for poking in the eyes or kicking in the groin. I guarantee you that. If you want that, you can go somewhere else. But the reason why I do things the way that I do it is because I'm looking for a long term sustainable change for women to feel grounded, to rise, because when they rise, they're more inclined to pick up their other sister that has fallen and say, you know what? I found that strength and I want you to go with me, right? We're not here to compete with one another. And that's the type of world we need to be in. So that's a little bit about why, and I will share some more stories along the way. But I'd love to, if you're watching this on a replay or whatnot, hit replay and let me know what's resonating with you about this, because the way that we defend ourselves has to evolve, right? You cannot just stick to McDojo. You cannot just go to the strip mall situation and maybe you don't like that setup or you don't like the vibe and think, okay, well, martial arts or self-defense isn't for me, right? I'm here to tell you that there's other ways of self advocacy and finding your power and standing in your power. And that is what I'm here for. And that is what my company does is we help women at the root really ground themselves in love and courage. So when the time comes for you to have to physically manage distance, you'll have those skill sets, but that you have the mind and that you have the voice to be able to say, you know what? Enough is enough. I don't deserve this. I will prevail. I will be triumphant. Right. So I'd love to hear if any of this resonated with you. And let me know what comes up for you. If you've ever taken a martial arts class, how that went for you. What are some common things that you've always been told about self-defense? And I'm here to dispel those myth busters for you, right? Because it's old school what you've been taught most of the time, which is like put your keys in between your fists and all of this stuff. And I'm gonna tell you right now, stop putting air tags in your luggage, right? Because we live in a world of human trafficking and sex trafficking and people and technology, like stop doing these things without thinking about, well, why is it that I'm doing this? Right? Why is it that I'm carrying around pepper spray, right? What would I do if I use the pepper spray and I miss? That's what I'm interested in, right? I'm not here to sell you accessories and keychains, y'all. It's really like helping you come up with a strategy to get yourself out of bad situations, right? You already know the threats that exist for you because it's nonstop, right? And it feels like an uphill battle. So, again, if any of this resonates with you, I'd love to hear it. And I will see you next week.